Have you ever wondered why a heavy cruise ship floats? We're going to answer that question in this video. An object that floats in water sits on the surface of the water. The surface of the water is the part of the water that meets the air. To explain floating and sinking, we're going to have to discuss volume and density. In Class 1 or Grade 2, you were introduced to three-dimensional shapes. All of these objects have a volume. The volume is the amount of space that they take up. If you stick your hand in a container of water, the level of water rises. It happens because your hand is moving water out of the way. Your hand is also a three-dimensional object, and objects have volume. The bigger your hand, the more water it will move or displace. When you're cooking soup, you shouldn't fill the saucepan to the top with water, even though some of the water will be lost as steam. The ingredients are going to displace some of the water. When the water starts to boil, it can get very messy. Water that is displaced has weight. Everything that you can touch or see is made up of matter. Matter is made up of molecules. A molecule is a group of two or more atoms held together by a chemical bond. Water is also known as H2O. This means it's made up of two hydrogen atoms and one oxygen atom in a molecule. When molecules are tightly packed together, the substance or object becomes dense. Water is an exception to this rule. Solid water is known as ice. Ice is less dense than water and it will float. When molecules are loosely packed together, they are less dense. Floating and sinking have nothing to do with how big or how small an object is. A large balloon will float, but a small nail will sink. Gravity is a force that pulls objects to the ground. If there were no gravity, we would float right into space and all the planets would probably collide. You're probably wondering, what does gravity have to do with floating and sinking? When you jump, gravity tries to pull you back down to the surface of the earth. When you're swimming in the sea, gravity wants to pull you to the bottom of the ocean floor. There is a force which pushes your body to the surface of the water. This force is known as buoyancy. If the buoyant force of an object submerged in water is equal to the weight of the water displaced, the object will float. This is known as Archimedes' principle after Archimedes, who lived in the 3rd century BC. This principle is known as the law of buoyancy, which states that any object that we place in a gas or liquid at rest is acted on by an equal or buoyant force. The size of the buoyant force is equal to the weight of the water or gas displaced by the body. For example, if we have a block that weighs 5 kilograms and we lower it slowly into water, some of the water will move out of the way. It is being displaced. If the amount of water that has been displaced equals to 4 kilograms, a force of 4 kilograms will be pushing on the block. The buoyant force will reduce the weight of the block to 1 kilogram. If the water displaced were 5 kilograms, the block would be weightless and therefore float. What does this all mean? Boats are designed to float. An object such as a brick is not designed to float and it will sink. A brick will sink because it's displacing less water than its weight. If you take a piece of softwood that is the same size as the brick, it may float, but there are actually some types of wood that will sink because they're very dense. Very dense usually means very heavy. So floating and sinking all goes back to Archimedes' principle. Boats float because they're designed to displace more water than their weight. If a boat weighs 10,000 kilograms and it's not displacing more than 10,000 kilograms, it will sink. If you enjoyed the video, please give me a thumbs up, and if you'd like to see more videos about science, please hit the subscribe button.